Greetings and welcome to the Truth Algorithm informational video, and this is part 2. Now, previously we recorded and made available part 1 of the Truth Algorithm, which was an introduction to this subject. In this part, which is part 2, we will be discussing the Truth Algorithm in a bit more technical detail and giving you more technical information about this cognitive device, if you will, or this analytic engine that is part of the Truth Algorithm. And also we will deal more with Bayes' theorem and discuss that in a bit more detail in a way that hopefully will be understandable and enjoyable as we delve into this subject. And the reason for this is quite simply this is an idea whose time has come. Now, my name is Captain Kevin Smith, and I am the author of the Truth Algorithm, as well as a number of other initiatives, books, and radio shows, and so forth. I'm also an author of a book currently in national distribution. It is called the Critical Thinking Essentials Quick Reference Handbook, and this is part of the body of knowledge that we have made available to the public in terms of the idea behind the Truth Algorithm, why we must also embrace critical thinking and how they work hand in glove together to enable us to make sense out of this crazy world of ours. Also, I have a radio show, and I am the host of Throttle Up. It's a radio show on Red State Talk Radio, and it is a weekend show which airs both Saturdays and Sundays on Red State Talk Radio. And also, it's a podcast, so you can get our podcast anywhere through iTunes, as well as going directly to our website, throttleUpradio.com, and you can listen to our radio shows on the go at any time. Okay, now, this part 2 of the Truth Algorithm informational video or instructional video, if you like that term, they both apply. We are going to spend a bit of time trying to understand what is it about reality that we need to understand and utilize such that we can make sense out of what is happening in our lives, what is happening in the world, so that we can respond effectively and appropriately and not make mistakes in our response or lack of response to what is actually going on. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about definitions and clarification of ideas and to get to the bottom of what we mean by certain words and phrases going forward to set the stage here, to set the stage so that we can properly deal with this issue of how to find the truth in a hostile world. First and foremost, we have to understand what is reality. Reality represents that which is real. It actually exists and is verifiably true. Clarification of the environment in which one resides, as well as the situation that has been encountered, is key to knowledge and comprehension of that which is real. We have to look at our environment, we have to look at our situation, as well as looking at the specifics that we are trying to address ourselves to. One of the keys in going forward is to recognize that we are, in fact, living in a world in which uncertainty prevails. There is a lot of uncertainty out there for various reasons, not least of which is censorship. Okay, so uncertainty is real. It is part of our reality, a part of our existence, and we have to address ourselves to that fact, to that reality. We have to address ourselves to conditions in which uncertainty prevails in order for us to make sense out of the world. The truth algorithm, here is a good definition. The truth algorithm works hand in glove with critical thinking to enable one to employ algorithmic reasoning in order to reliably distinguish between that which is the truth and that which is not true. The truth algorithm, what is it? The truth, that which is true relates to that which is also true. In other words, what I'm saying is that the truth is not an isolated phenomena. The truth actually exists within a model of reality in which things that are also true support the objective truth that we have identified. The truth resides within a quantum field of reality in which connections and networks reside. We talked about this before in the first video, and so we're repeating ourselves because it's important for us to understand. What is true is that which resides within a model of reality that is actual, objectively real, and capable of manifesting beneficial results. The truth algorithm, how does it work? That which is true connects with other aspects of reality that are likewise true, creating a quantum field of reality from which knowledge and wisdom emerge. If what we know is true, then it allows for productive activities to occur, benefiting ourselves and others. The truth algorithm. Now, we occupy an environment that is adverse as well as being hostile to reason. As we speak, truth is being suppressed. Importantly, hostile agents have entered our mind space, armed with cognitive mechanisms designed to increase the plausibility of a proposition or assertion that is objectively untrue, but masquerades as the truth. Here we have a graphical depiction of what a quantum field looks like. This is part of the reality that we are trying to address ourselves to. Also, and we're just going to touch on this because this is a little bit unusual, perhaps even outside the box. Nevertheless, we are going to mention that the truth algorithm, and in particular Bayes' theorem, actually does look at proportionality. It is a mathematical construct that recognizes the importance of things that are proportional to one another. So in the model of reality that we are creating here, keep this in mind, that we are actually looking at things that are proportional. We can also say we are looking at things that are symmetrical. Nevertheless, various ratios that exists within the realm of reality often are equal. So we could also call it the equalization of ratios or proportions. What are we dealing with? We are dealing with deception. First and foremost, we have to understand that, and we have to be very, very clear. One of the values of doing this video, and one of the values of watching this video, is we use this to clear up any confusion about what we mean and what we are all about. Clarification is crucial here. We have to understand that. We have to be very, very careful in our ability to clarify the actual. And this is what we're doing. And here we are clarifying what exactly is happening to us with respect to deception. Deception is alive and well. Deception is all around us. Deception has to be recognized for what it is. Deception, I will read this, deception is presented to an unsuspecting consumer of information, which could be us, hopefully it's not, but it could be, and immediately accepted as the truth. This is extremely important that we understand that deception is intended to deceive us because whoever is perpetrating the deception wants us to buy into this deception immediately without examination. And we are not going to do that. In order for the lie, that is deception, to work, it must be invited into one's consciousness and accepted and processed as that which is true. This, in turn, will produce contamination of human consciousness. The end result of deception is to contaminate human consciousness, which things that are masquerading as the truth, but in fact, are not true. Therefore, human consciousness can either embrace the clarification of reality or become so contaminated that it does not know what exactly is real. It does not know what precisely is the truth. Okay, that's what we are dealing with, and we are trying to address ourselves to human consciousness and prevent it from becoming contaminated. Human consciousness, just as a review, deals with that which is known or knowledge, acquiring knowledge, also engaging in purposeful activities, achieving success, and ultimately gaining wisdom. This is why humans are conscious, and that's why we have consciousness, ultimately to gain wisdom. Okay, now we're going to be delving into this whole area of algorithmic reasoning. What is the truth algorithm, and why do we need it, and how we can use it? We touched on this in the first video, the introduction video. We're going to delve into this a little bit more in depth than the first one. So just be prepared for that. The truth algorithm does, in fact, address itself to certain things that we need to be aware of. Number one, critical thinking. That's crucial. The other one is skepticism. We are going to be skeptical about everything out there. Healthy skepticism is, in fact, the order of the day. And along with that, we are going to engage in clarification. We are going to clarify to the greatest possible extent. We are going to clarify what exactly is going on and what exactly do we mean by certain things. We will also involve ourselves with correlation between events and circumstances. Absolutely. This correlation is key. Causal inference is, in fact, important as well. And conditional probabilities. We are going to be dealing with that in a very substantial way. Conditional probabilities are going to be our bread and butter going forward. Okay, so we're going to dive into this whole aspect of the truth algorithm and look at it from the perspective of Bayes' theorem. First and foremost, and probably the most important thing that I can say about a Bayes' theorem or algorithmic reasoning or Bayesian algorithmic reasoning, they're all basically means the same thing. The most important thing I can say is to quote directly from Thomas Bayes as he put this theorem together. He said that probability is orderly opinion. And then he went on to say that inference from data is nothing other than the revision of such opinion in the light of relevant new information. Okay. And here you can see on the screen, this is actually part of it is it doesn't show up, but Bayes' theorem is shown also on the screen. We'll get to the Bayes' theorem here pretty quick in the next few slides. Okay. Bayes' theorem is based upon the idea that conditional probability is ordered opinion. So we're going to be looking at probabilities. Remember, when we started this discussion, we said that uncertainty prevails. We can either just give up when we encounter uncertainty, or we can embrace the idea of conditional probabilities or probability. Another way of saying that, of course, is the likelihood that something could occur, did occur, or will not occur. What is the likelihood? Means the same thing. Bayes' theorem, here we see on the screen, we can see Bayes' theorem. We've talked about this before, but it's important for us to revisit it so we understand it in a way that we can actually employ it on a regular basis. The probability or the posterior probability, that would be P A given B, the mathematical expression on the left side of the equal sign, is equal to the conditional probability of event B given A has occurred multiplied by the probability of A, all divided by the probability of event B having occurred. The truth algorithm, which employs Bayesian algorithmic reasoning, is based upon the premise that probability is ordered opinion, and revisions of such opinion should occur in the light of relevant new information. This whole idea is based upon the fact that that informational reality is not static, it is dynamic. We will encounter relevant new information as we pursue our efforts to uncover the truth. As we pursue those efforts, we will encounter things that will update our understanding of what has occurred or what will occur. Now, the truth algorithm is fundamentally based upon what we see here on this graphical representation. Here we see the conditional probabilities going from right to left or going from left to right, doesn't matter which way we go with it. We can see that as we move from left to right, the conditional probabilities increase to the point where we eventually see a complete circle, and that is given the value of 1.0. So That which is objectively true is given a value of unity, of 1. That which is likely to be true is given a value of 0.75, and so forth and so on. And we are then going to be using those conditional probabilities going forward to try to understand what is the likelihood, or what is the expectation that an event or occurrence actually is true. Okay, now here we have Bayes' theorem, and I'm going to throw this out as uh, uh, just as uh, a point of discussion. I'm not going to dwell on it because it is something that is going to require a significant amount of effort uh, to clarify what we are trying to address. But I'm going to point out that Bayes' theorem does not reside in a vacuum. Bayes' theorem does not reside alone. Bayes' theorem actually does embrace other key aspects of mathematics. And the mathematics of symmetry is one of the keys to understanding Bayes' theorem. Here I have thrown out some numbers that have to do with the golden mean or the golden ratio. The golden mean or the golden ratio and Bayes' theorem work hand in glove. I'm just going to say that up front. I know that sounds like it is way outside the box. I would suggest that it is, in fact, way outside the box, but it is, in fact, mathematically valid. And so we have to understand that Bayes' theorem and the golden ratio is, in fact, one and the same thing. It does, in fact, address itself to that which is symmetrical or covariant. And the reason why I'm throwing this out here is because Bayes' theorem actually does reside on very solid ground. It is something that is not well understood, but the key to understanding the value and how to embrace and employ the truth algorithm as it is empowered by Bayes' theorem is to understand that it is a major component of the golden mean or the golden ratio mathematical formula. Okay, here we have this is we can call this a truth table if you would like to call it that. This is a table that we have constructed to show visually what we are talking about. Here we have event A on the top and event B on the side or the left side, and here we can combine those two and bring them together. We can see that if the conditional probability that A has occurred is at 0.50, in other words, it's possible that A has occurred. What is the conditional probability of B? And then how we can look at those things together going forward. This is a good way for us to understand what is actually occurring or what has occurred going forward so that we can make some value judgments about whether or not this happens to be true. Now here we can see what we can do with these tables. Here we have event A as a standalone situation. Here we also event B as a standalone situation. And also we have event B given that event A has occurred. We can see what that conditional probability is. When we put all of these things together in the theorem and come up with a answer to it, we can see that the answer, which is on the right hand side, which is the conditional probability of A having occurred given that B has occurred, is in fact 0.25 in this theoretical example. Okay, you can see how the algorithm works, and this is pretty important. Look at how the algorithm behaves given these inputs. What is the output to the to the to the inquiry? What is the output? And we can look at it in terms of how this all behaves algorithmically. Okay, now we are going to examine Bayes' theorem. Again, I know this is a little bit tedious because we have been here before, but it's important for us to make sure that we all understand it to a level by which or in which we can effectively use it going forward. Here we have Bayes' theorem once again. On the left-hand side, we have the probability that A has occurred given that B has occurred is equal to the probability that B has occurred given that A has occurred times the probability of A occurring as a standalone construct divided by the probability that B has occurred as a standalone construct. When you plug in the numbers, probability of A equals 0.50, the probability of B equals 0.50, and the probability of B given that A has occurred equals 0.25, we begin to see that the answer to that, or the answer in terms of the probability of A having occurred given that B has occurred, is in fact 0.25 as well. So we can begin to see how this theorem actually works. This is just another example of it. I'm just going to cover this very quickly. The probability that the assertion proposition is true given the initial and updated evidence. All right, it's important given the initial and the updated evidence. In this particular case, as you can see, the probability that A has occurred given that B has occurred is 0.25. In this particular hypothetical case, the likelihood that A, given that B has occurred, is true is very, very low. Okay, here we have it again. We can see that the probability of A having occurred given that B has occurred is on the left-hand side of the equation or the theorem, and you can begin to see the other components on the right-hand side as we combine them and use mathematical calculations to determine their value. Again, we are dealing with conditional probabilities here. That's what we're dealing with, because we are dealing with a world in which uncertainty prevails. Again, Bayes' theorem, it is a belief expressed as a likelihood in terms of a conditional probability. And that's what the theorem is all about. Here we can see the conditional probability of A and the conditional probability of B as two standalone items, and we can see how we can bring those together and look at them not only from a singular standpoint, but look at them from the standpoint of those coming together. The B would be the updated information, where A is the beginning or the starting place, or the a priori information. Here you can see that this table helps us to understand the relationship between event A and event B. Okay, now after we spent a little bit of extra time on the truth algorithm with respect to the Bayes theorem, we are going to now dive into what I call a case study. Okay, so here we are going to take a look at an actual case study, and keep in mind that this is real. This has actually occurred, and this is something that we have address ourselves to with respect to the truth algorithm. We are going to address ourselves to a particular aspect of what we call deception and propaganda. This is a classic case study of how to address oneself to propaganda and deception. You're going to notice some things here that are going to be amazing. You're going to uncover amazing things about this whole world of propaganda and deception. As we address ourselves to that, we are going to see how important the truth algorithm is for us to be able to confront and defeat propaganda and deception. All right, as we begin our examination of this case study, the title of it is COVID-19 and Pregnant People. What do you need to know? Okay, the first order of business here is that no, that is not a typographical error. No, that is not misstatement of the situation. This is I am taking this directly from the headlines. Okay. Yes, they called it Pregnant People. Okay. That's exactly what the headline says and said. Just to keep that in mind. It starts off by saying that data from the beginning of this pandemic shows us that pregnant people face higher rates of complications not from infection, but if they do become infected, higher rates of complications, including ICU admissions, ventilation support, incubation. I know this is redundant, but this is exactly verbatim of what they have produced. Preterm delivery rates higher, which of course has its own subset of risk factors. The spokesperson says the following: I have spoken to the CDC, the FDA, the head of ACOG Vaccine Division, also the Maternal Fetal Medicine Society, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they all unanimously recommend that people who are pregnant get the COVID vaccine. In terms of infection and complications, the first order of business is that we are utilizing our critical thinking skills here. Okay, even before we apply the algorithmic reasoning process, even before that occurs, we are going to apply our critical thinking capabilities right up front, right? If there are higher rates of complications once affection has occurred, how does that correspond to the infection rates, which are most likely lower for people who are pregnant or women who are pregnant, to make it sound more reasonable? Uh, Women who are pregnant that are receiving prenatal care are, in fact, very, very careful in their lifestyle. And so it is extremely likely that the infection rates of this segment of the population are much lower. How does that correspond to complications? If you have a significantly lower infection rate, what does that do to the higher rates of complications? One works against the other. This is where critical thinking comes in. The first order of business here is there's something very, very fishy about what they are trying to get us to believe. Very, very suspicious. Here we are applying not only critical thinking, but healthy skepticism in terms of our ability to understand what exactly is in fact going on here. Okay. COVID-19 and pregnant people. Now, this is very, very important, what I'm going to say right here. This is crucial. And this basically blows their whole argument out of the water. Here we can see deception on display. It is so painfully obvious that this is nothing more than propaganda. This statement goes on to say the following, quote, I know, the spokesperson is saying this now, I know pregnant women were not initially enrolled in the COVID-19 trials. That is to err on the side of caution. Okay, keep that in mind. There were no clinical trials with respect to the COVID-19 vaccine and women who are pregnant. There were no clinical trials. The spokesperson went on to say, but Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna were, of course, tracking whether people became pregnant during clinical trials. They learned there were 0 safety signals, significant safety issues amongst people who were pregnant and had been vaccinated. Okay, let's examine the words that are used. Let us examine the chosen words here. They were, of course, tracking. What does tracking mean? What exactly does that mean? Tracking. We are talking about essentially incidental tracking of a certain subset of people who were part of the clinical trials, but not by design. This was incidentally. They became pregnant. All right. How was the tracking? Was this tracking part of the clinical trial methodology? And it clearly was not. If it was outside of the clinical trial methodology, why is it even being discussed? And what exactly do we mean by 0 safety signals, significant safety issues? What exactly does that mean? What is the scientific explanation for what does that mean? I know a lot about safety, and I will tell you that the term 0 safety signals is very, very sketchy. We have to become much clearer of exactly what we mean by that and what were those signals specifically. What were those signals? Okay, keep this in mind because this is updated information as we go into the truth algorithm and Bayes' theorem. Keep this in mind. Clinical trials were not performed. That is updated information with respect to the the clinical trials for that were in fact performed by people who were not pregnant, but clinical trials were not performed with respect to women who were pregnant. The spokesperson went on to say that with respect to COVID vaccine, the vaccine does not affect fertility. There is no biological pathway for this to happen. All right, so that is a statement. Is that statement true? All right, I would say that we need a lot more clarification with respect to that. if we are injecting something into the bloodstream of a person who is pregnant, is in fact that a reasonably safe thing for us to do? To say that there is no biological pathway flies in the face of logic, because we understand from a long history of prenatal care that there are substances and contaminants that could enter the bloodstream or the body of the mother and have a negative effect or impact on the unborn child. The bottom line, now this is extremely important, and I'm quoting this verbatim, so keep this in mind here as we examine this piece of information of whether or not it is representing the truth. The bottom line, as reported by the spokesperson, if you are pregnant or if you are considering becoming pregnant, speak to your obstetrician, speak to your midwife about how to make this decision for you. Okay, so what they're saying here is that they are absolving themselves of any responsibility because they are basically saying that whether or not you get the vaccine and while you are pregnant, it is your decision. Okay, so they're painting a picture here. They're giving you all kinds of information of how valuable it is to receive the vaccination, but they're basically saying that ultimately it's your decision. Why are they doing it that way? Okay, that's a very, very good question, and that ought to be on the forefronts of our mind, particularly when we are employing uh, healthy skepticism and critical thinking. Okay, this is another piece of information that we need to consider going forward. Okay, as we utilize the Bayes' theorem, we begin to see how valuable it is because it does takes into account this updated information. You notice that on the right-hand side of the screen, you notice that event B, given that A has occurred, is now conditionally rated as a conditional probability of it being true. Um, the assertion being true is rated very low. It's 0.25. And that's because the updated information we received was that no clinical trials actually were ever conducted with pregnant people and COVID vaccinations. Given that no clinical trials were conducted, what is the conditional probability, or what is the likelihood that that proposition or assertion is true, and what is the final answer, which is the probability of A, given that B has occurred, is in fact 0.25. It's a very, very low probability that that assertion is true. Truth of the assertion. That's what we are getting at here. The truth of the assertion is 0.25. Therefore, the assertion that that the vaccination is safe for pregnant people is in fact unlikely to be true and we have determined that mathematically utilizing Bayes' theorem. Our determination is that that assertion is almost certainly not true. It's very, very unlikely to be true. Okay, that completes our discussion here on the truth algorithm part 2. Keep this in mind. As we examine this whole area or issue related to what is the truth, what is our model of reality, we are moving away from literal determinism because we are living in a world in which uncertainty prevails. And we're moving in the direction of probabilistic conceptualism. That is a new form of thinking that is extremely important for us to understand that. Old forms of thinking are, in fact, not going to work. Old forms of thinking are no longer useful. We have now embraced new forms of thinking. We can call it by a number of names. I choose to call it probabilistic conceptualism. Another way of saying that, and I have used this term often as well, it's abstract conceptualism. Okay, and we can use those two terms interchangeably, but that's a new form of thinking. That's what the truth algorithm teaches us. The truth algorithm teaches us, first and foremost, that abstract conceptualism that considers probabilistic nature of things is, in fact, the way we should be thinking whenever we encounter conditions or situations in which propaganda and deception and uncertainty is prevalent. If that is the world that we have encountered, then we have got to utilize probabilistic or abstract conceptualism as a way for us to think about how we should address ourselves to that reality. All right. Thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed this video, this instructional video. We will be doing part 3 of the truth algorithm in the near future, so keep that in mind going forward. Thank you once again.